Hello again, I'm Bob Colt, and welcome to Conversations in Charlotte Public Schools. We're talking technology, and Mr. Technology is here, and some people know you as a principal, but really you're Mr. Technology in the district now too, aren't you?
That is correct.
Well, talk about the level of technology that Charlotte has, because it's something to really be proud of in a lot of cases, but that's always a challenge. You've got to continuously keep up on technology.
That's correct, and the state has actually outlined some parameters to sort of help us with how and what our tech should be. But we have what I would call really good traditional infrastructures. We have a couple of computer labs at each of the lower elementary buildings. We run 6 computer labs at the upper elementary middle school, and then around 6 to 7 labs at the high school. So if you think of just a traditional structure, we have a really good computer or CPU structure. But then we also have iPads, 10 iPads in all the elementary classrooms. We have some extra sets for them to use, and then we have 1-to-1 712. So when you take that and you
So when you say that, what does that mean, 1-to-1 712 for the person sitting at home?
That means that our 7th graders are walking around with their own iPad, and they actually have their textbook, or as we call it, tech book, for science and social studies right in this iPad. We also have created a PDF document for their math book to be carried around in their iPad. When the book companies get around to it, we'll probably have that 4th or final language arts component put right in there, which is very different from just a couple years ago when we had all these textbooks.
Yeah.
So we are really trying to run the cutting edge for public schools. We have also sort of put in place a Project Lead the Way component that starts at our upper elementary and moves through the middle school and starting at the high school. Really interesting 3-dimensional design components. We're looking at bringing in maybe some 3D printers, just trying to get the students' feet wet with what the potential is in science and technology and how it can all come together to be a really cool and well-paying career for them.
Yeah, and as an administrator, you've got to constantly look at the bottom line with the investment in technology. And is there a point where the return on investment doesn't make sense? I mean, most school districts don't have the infrastructure that Charlotte can be proud of, and you're even branching out in some of the technology. But is there a point where you spend too much on technology, or you're not getting the value, or do you think Charlotte's in a good position right now?
I think Charlotte has always been very careful with their money. I think if you ask around, we've always been known to make sure that when we spend it, we're spending it on the right things that we have proven at that time. We're looking at the future of maybe getting more technologies into students' hands, but making the judgment of what the next best move isn't always as easy as just reading what the latest ads are. We have different platforms that are out there now that have changed just since we bought the iPads. And knowing the right thing for our students is something that we very diligently try to spend the time of administrators, and we have a group of teachers coming forward, and even listening to the students about what's that balance. And you talk about where's the diminishing returns or what's the right amount. At one point, the bringing a pen or a calculator into schools, somebody said this just isn't what we need to spend money on. We don't need the time for it. Why would you spend $100 on, remember the red digit number calculators that were hugely expensive? And the math teachers at that time said there's no way we should be spending money on this. It's not the right use of our time. It's not good for kids. And after time we all realized, well, this is just a part of living now. Nobody has to do these advanced calculations that take a half hour to solve when you can type it in. But you do have to have the logic behind it to know that if you get a completely different answer than where you should be able to say, now wait a minute, maybe I need to do that again on my calculator. So this is that same sort of technical balance we have now. I don't believe that technology is going to take what I would call our traditional performances and move them to this super ultimate level, because now the kids just have all this information they can get.
Yeah.
But what it is going to do is be a tool for them to bring in answers to their questions, instead of spending maybe an hour like you and I used to do, where we'd go down to the media center and you would pull out one research book on this and maybe an autobiography, and then you'd go, of course, to your world book and you'd pull out your encyclopedia. You'd put together some concept, you'd write a paper, and there you go, you had something. Well, that would take us hours, maybe days, if we did a really good job. in the matter of 3 or 4 minutes, the students can have multiple sources on information that might be far better than what we had available to us, with data, maybe even three-dimensional pictures. So research now is doing the smart research and
Yeah.
thinking, and it's just really changing. The whole game of education is changing because we have so much access to so much information so fast.
And young people do now, with those iPads that they're walking around with, they have access to so much information, which is the right technology to be investing in. And tell people a little bit about what that iPad means for a student and how they use it, because I'm not sure everybody really knows.
Okay. Well, when I spoke earlier of the tech book,
Yeah.
it's not just another place where the text is inside and you turn pages. It's actually a link of anything from lessons that are laid out to the students, which has 3D labs for science where they go in and sort of three-dimensionally play with these concepts to see how they work together, to embedded videos to sort of put more information in a visual way for students to understand the concepts. It takes the reading and can move it down a couple levels for that student that isn't a great reader, but they can still get the concepts. It's an ever-evolving and molding to the concepts. Now, some of the tech books or textbooks actually that are coming out even have different instructors delivering the same concepts in 3 or 4 different ways. And so we're really at this point where you've got this textbook, but it doesn't mean just a bunch of print anymore. It means this great plethora of different avenues of how I can learn this subject. And that's just this little margin of what this iPad does. It also opens up that portal to the internet. Now we have filters here at the school that sort of oversee all of our internet connection, and the iPads themselves have filters, so the kids, if they try to go places they shouldn't, it sort of stops them and sends them messages. But other than that, they can click from one idea to the next, kind of probably as you've learned with your own computer now, how you start with a question and before you know it you have this whole list of questions that you're starting to answer and learning. So then there's that slice. We also have 120 apps, and each of the apps do something different. We have some for social studies, science. We have some where the kids can create their own video games. We have some where they can do three-dimensional art. Pretty much anything that you can sort of imagine in and around some of the different curricular areas is available. What we've done is we've employed all the free for now. So if the app is free and it sort of lends itself well to the subject, we've been trying it on. We haven't made that investment because, again, we're careful of spending $5 even on an app, because with 1,000 kids, $5, very quickly you spend a lot of money.
Sure.
So we've been very careful to sort of utilize these apps that are free, but some of them are as powerful as the kids can type in their algebraic sentence. They can come up with the answer showing all of the different scratch work all the way along. So when you get home, if you're opening up your PDF file in your iPad to sort of do a math problem, and you know that x squared plus 3x minus 2 equals 37, you can type that into this app and it'll actually give you the whole written answer with all the steps involved. Now, some people would say, well, I just got my homework answered. But I would say, I remember a day going home even when I was in middle school or early high school, and my parents looked at me and said, I don't really know how to help you with this algebra stuff. You're really going to be on your own.
Yeah.
So I would go and I would start doing stuff, and I'd maybe spend 2 hours doing the wrong thing. So the concept that we can have this app guide a student along to make sure that they're following the appropriate steps, and if they still have to write out all the work in the proper format, really that's the purpose of homework.
And it is a guide, it is a tool, it is a thing. It's also attractive to a lot of young people because it's how they learn, right?
Yes, it is. There's a great deal of excitement for the students, and some of them having their own devices now at home. I think the excitement lends itself to the gaming they're used to, but a lot of the educational things we have now have bridges of games in them. So as they're in there working through the concepts, they have this excitement of the games with it. And it is how they learn. Like I was just speaking of how they move from one question to the next to the next. Many students aren't nice linear thinkers where they move through the concept. They want information all around and maybe not in any certain order. And the iPad lets them have 6 different things open, answering those questions and moving through this larger problem, which ultimately happens to be the way that the state is looking at testing us. So
Yeah.
kind of exciting that we're evolving into this new student in this new realm with technology, but maybe a little bit scarier for some of us older folks who've been in for 20 some years and are saying, are we really ready for this?
Well, how do you do it? How do you do it as a principal and coordinate all of this technology vision that you have to do now with the school district?
You know, I have wonderful people that I work with. I have teachers who are really leading the way. Mr. Haston, who works in my building, really is phenomenal when it comes to technology. He's always willing to try on new things, to get out there, and you know, we're always looking for what is the most cost-efficient way to do the sort of things that we know students will be doing in the real world, so that they can try it on and they can taste it, but we're not going to spend the bank on trying to let them have that experience. Yeah. And he's always putting himself out there. I also have a wonderful tech crew that sort of is the hands-on, okay, something's wrong with your iPad, let's take a look at it. And you know, they are working very hard to sort of manage this, and you had all your traditional tech, and by the way, here's iPads for kind of everybody too. And so they're really juggling a lot of things, and just very smart people who do a really good job. So, you know, without them and having people like Karen Anderson at the Media Center to sort of help me understand all of these concepts that all come together, and yet are moving at 100 miles an hour into a new direction that, you know, everybody's struggling to sort of keep up with, it takes a lot of people.
Well, and when it takes a lot of people, the key person in the whole mix is the teacher, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And the student, because sometimes the students can very quickly tell us, this isn't working and this is why. And they'll also tell us very quickly, here's where your loopholes are and here's how we're able to compromise your systems.
Yeah.
And so there are times when we'll have something that we think is a wonderful tool that has all these locks on it that's perfect, and they'll find some little end around and say, well, look what I found and this is what I can do. And then we go, all right, well, let's pull that back in and see what else we can do. And it's wonderful that, you know, we can have, you know, such smart tech savvy students to help us sort of keep on our game.
But that's where we're at right now with younger people know this stuff and are very used to it, and oftentimes they're teaching older folks about what's going on. But I would imagine when a young person in the Charlotte Public School District goes home, they're probably teaching their parents a lot about technology. That's kind of valuable too, though, isn't it?
It really is. That we've created a portal for many homes to go out and get those same answers we talked about as a student. There are many cases where parents contact me and say, you know, I was using the iPad, or I'll pull a student's iPad in and we'll run reviews once in a while, and the student will say, yeah, my dad was using it all Sunday afternoon, and you can see NASCAR and you can see all the things he was looking up. And I think that's a wonderful way to sort of get technology in people's hands, and remembering that this technology was afforded for us by the community. You know, it's not some computer we stuck in some room that isn't being used on the weekends, or this is always being used. The kids are always charging them, they're always just a-going.
And so, you know, some of the applications that are free are very valuable and provide a lot of information, but there probably are some paid applications that are pretty good too. You probably have to make some tough decisions about that stuff.
We do. We have been afforded a new software oversight that we found called Meraki, that's helping us sort of manage having hundreds of iPads out there, but maybe we only want to buy 30 licenses. So how, without going and pulling one kid's iPad and putting another one back, are you going to send somebody the software they need when they need it?
Yeah.
And so we have this new sort of virtual way that we're going to be pushing things out, and we're sort of test running that right now with the help of Jeff Bennett at the middle school. He's sort of overseeing some of that, and we're very hopeful because there are some apps that are $30 and $40 each. Yeah. And we can't afford to, with the way we run the iPads, have a student have this app and never be able to pull it back if they have an iTunes account at the high school, or if they're younger, sort of have it disappear after they use it because we can't really maintain it because of the rules of software.
Yeah, and it's tough to support something that is expensive at home when you have people on limited incomes, and there is a lot of good stuff that's free, so you're probably making the right decision. Do you think we've probably explored all of the free stuff that's out there and available right now?
You know, I forget how many hundreds of thousands of free apps there are right now. And I would say every time we think that we've got a grouping of the very best ways to utilize, somebody comes out with 6 more.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're opening up a free version of something that later becomes paid. So I have apps. I had an iPad before the district had them, and some of my apps now are worth $20 and $30 that I received as free. So you can kind of come in at the ground level if you see something that's great and you get it, and then as it evolves and grows and becomes more and more, you got it at the free level.
Well, these are kind of good problems to have. Aren't
Yes, they are.
You can make your decision from a lot of choices out
Yes.
there. Where do you think technology's going? I mean, is there a next step in public education? Because Charlotte seems to be ahead of a lot of other school districts. You want to maintain that edge, but is there a next natural step?
I think the thing that we've had to come to sort of terms with most recently is we had one of our textbook providers tell us they're not creating textbooks 3 years out.
Yeah.
They're going to be done printing. That means we need to have some sort of interface for kids a few years out from now. What will that be? How will that work? Will it mean, many of the students have better stuff or technology than we have. Will that mean that we'll be allowing them to come in? Will it mean that we'll continue to sort of stay out in front with what we do? I'm not sure where it's going to go because so much of it's sort of hinging on finance.
Yeah.
I know that if we had great amounts of finance, we'd have all of the students have 5 or 6 different gadgets and they move around and they do all that they wanted, and we would have 10 times the people I have now to maintain all that. So where does public education fit with that? We've again been blessed by our community with supporting us with the decisions we've made. We'll continue to be frugal and try to do it at the right pace, at the right time for our students and our community.
Well, technology is something exciting to talk about, and thanks for taking a time out from being a principal to talk about technology. I'm Bob Colton. We'll continue our conversations in Charlotte Public Schools.